Longtime viewers might remember my video, The Strangest Fan Wiki, which I released a bit under 3 years ago. Where does the time go? That video was about the Villainous Beauties wiki, an utterly inexplicable fandom.com wiki devoted exclusively to female villains in like movies and TV shows and sometimes Darman videos. All that you're liable to find on a given page is a tiresome recap of everything the character in question has ever done, and possibly a list of similarities they might have to other characters featured elsewhere on the wiki. But in particular, I singled out the page for Bree from the 2009 remake of Friday the 13th, although remake is an extremely loose term, a character who was portrayed by Juliana Gill, and who in the film only exists to be the slasher film party girl archetype before getting killed off by Jason. A pretty unremarkable character, all things considered. She's just another rung on a never-ending ladder. She's not even really a villain at all, except insofar as she steals her best friend's man. And that is the focus of her page on the Villainous Beauties wiki, which breaks the mold set by every other article, zeroing in meticulously on Bree as not merely a sexual figure, but as some kind of avatar of lust, and expanding her single minute-long adulterous sex scene in the movie into a multi-paragraph, minutely detailed extravaganza, and inserting clarifications and motivations for her at every turn in dizzying fashion, all of this being delivered in suffocating, overblown, comma-laden prose that places a telescopic, almost reverent emphasis on her sinfulness. Bree's page awkwardly toes the line between recap and fanfiction. Like, it is technically recounting the events of the movie, but with a not so subtle bias, and while squeezing in a slew of extra details up to and including Bree getting pregnant from her encounter with Trent Sutton. But it also neglects to mention that she straight up dies in the movie. But it does invent a surname for her, as well as a cup size. The long and short of it is that it's ultimately a piece of, like, erotica. Significant attention is devoted to outlining her attractiveness. Phrases like milky white melons and astronomically juicy are tossed around like hotcakes in the dimension where hot cake is what they call basketballs. And this lengthy novelization of a single scene in a years-old movie is clearly intended to provoke a reader toward arousal. Tacky, horny fanfictions are a dime a trillion, and I don't on the whole consider them worthy of mention, but the framing and particularly the location of this one produces a situation where all one can do is throw one's head back and laugh in the face of inevitable destruction. Likewise, the takeaways I voiced in that video were largely to the effect of, well, what the fuck is happening right now, you know? Why this movie? Why this character? Why is there an erotic fanfic smuggled into a fan wiki plot recap? Why put it on the wiki? Why would you host that here instead of on one of the many sites expressly designed for exactly this sort of thing? What even is the purpose of the Villainous Beauties wiki? What is the appeal? If it's just about female villains, why put beauties in the title? Is the Bree article saying the quiet part out loud? Is the whole wiki a subtle exercise in the eroticism of womanly diablerie, and this page missed the subtle part? Or is this page like a parasite violating the wiki's overall principles, in which case, why allow it to stay? The video I made is, like most of my early videos, pretty rough in hindsight. My trundle through the wiki was fairly onerous. I was way harsher on the movie than was really called for. The editing was stiff, the conclusions were basic, and the mic quality was non-existent. But what that video ultimately boiled down to was, I've encountered this thing that makes me laugh. I would like you to laugh about it too. And this is surely a noble ambition. It's also one of the most important videos to the development of my channel. It spawned a pseudo-series of videos I went on to call the Strangest Wiki Saga, where each video involves taking a tour through a given wiki or article and having a chortle. The Strangest Wikipedia debate, which to this day remains one of my personal favorites, is part of that series, and its subject matter was specifically suggested to me by a friend because of the Bree Turner video. It's been a while since I've made one of those videos, but I still make use of the improvisational humor reaction technique that I developed for that initial video, and Bree Turner has an enduring place in my heart. Like, I love her. She's the queen. I love her. As far as I'm concerned, she forms a holy trinity with like Bayonetta and Elvira. I'm not even into her like that. I was exposed to Bree through this article before I watched the movie. The article is the thing that shaped my understanding of her, and for me, the total over-the-topness of that page, the fact that that despite being virtual, one can easily perceive a profound wetness overlaying this article. For me, it launches her squarely into the territory of camp. She's written so vacuously here and in service of something so inane that the actions she's depicted as undertaking all pars like the trappings of a performance, and all I'm left to say is, yes bitch, gag me. Anyway, I'm not just here to recap an earlier video of mine, there actually is a point. In mid-December, I was sent a crucial ask by one of my treasured mutuals, Tumblr user Waslide Cool, and yeah, it is cool the way that she slides information over to me. I'm sorry for saying that. She advised me that the Bree Turner page on Villainous Beauties wiki is no longer. Yes, indeed, the permanent shutdown of the Jason-centric Dead by Daylight knockoff wasn't even the first piece of Friday the 13th media that was lost in December 2024. Bree's page was thoroughly deleted on December 3rd with even its edit history scrubbed. It's hardly as though all hope is lost considering the web archive exists, to say nothing of the random amino page I stumbled on, which has what looks like a copy-paste of a version of the article, but edit history and comments on the page are lost as far as I can tell. I don't have any big spectacular story to tell here. There's no real breadcrumb trail to follow. I can only assume that the page was deemed in violation of the rules, and well, it's pretty obvious why, isn't it? At long last, Bree's unfathomably juicy hubris has caught up to her. And that's the kind of eventuality that's hard to disagree with. As I've argued in the past, wikis are not Twitter, and they're not Tumblr, and they're certainly not Wattpad. They're specific projects with specific ambitions. For example, you'd be hard-pressed to argue that Wikipedia is not within its right to remove contributions that are untrue or unsubstantiated, in the same sense that if you submit a 500-page sci-fi action novel to a collaborative cookbook project, the publisher's not in the wrong for rejecting it. Bree's page was in direct violation of the wiki's specifications, and whether or not you want to wax about those specifications being ultimately inane or insalubrious for the maintenance of that wiki, I can think of nothing that can be reasonably positioned as inoculating the page against the policies or goals of the wiki. Except that the takedown doesn't seem to have been enforced by the wiki. The deletion was carried out by a member of fandom.com staff, and indeed, when you take a look at fandom's official community guidelines, don't post porn, shock images, or other disturbing content. For text, content that just mentions characters have sex is likely to be okay, but content that describes exactly how they have sex, is not. Apparently, in late 2022, fandom began shutting down all wikis of a sexual tenor. There are surely comments to be made about the ostensible freedoms that internet platforms provide, like surely something is revealed about the extent to which any and all internet communication plays out at the behest of something larger than itself. On any online platform, your speech is expected to conform to the guidelines of the platform, and if you dodge these guidelines, then you are always placing yourself at risk of having your speech deleted or having your account banned altogether. None of that is necessarily bad in a vacuum. I think few people would argue that there should be zero moderation whatsoever on internet platforms. Like, if a platform is being used for hate speech or sexual harassment or credible threats or the circulation of like revenge porn or similar, I think most viewers are likely to agree that these things should be stopped. If you do not want a platform to enable hate speech, the only real way to make that happen is to have systems for reporting and responding to hate speech. All this to say, the problem is decidedly not the existence of regulatory mechanisms for web platforms, but rather the fact that these mechanisms exist in the context of private corporate ownership under capitalism, and therefore the ethic these systems serve is one of investor friendliness, and in the website context, advertiser friendliness, hence the broad prohibition on sexuality. And all of that mess is before taking into account additional factors, such as biased, inaccurate, or disproportionate moderation practices. Consider the existence of a platform whose figurehead is equal parts arrogant, thin-skinned, and trigger happy. Consider the fact that that last statement could have been describing like 3 different websites. And now we end up at this manifold conundrum. Even speaking as someone with no skin in the Villainous Beauties game, I can't deny that from the perspective of the wiki, for all intents and purposes, the page probably should have been removed, but the reasons for that are not the reasons that it was removed in all likelihood. If Villainous Beauties wiki had been the one to take down the page, I'd have said, Oh yeah, obviously. But fandom itself, being the arm swinging that sword, situates its cleaves squarely within the tradition of the stifling flavor of mediation imposed by myriad web platforms. Wow, context is everything, who knew? But don't forget that we are operating on an assumption here. For all we know, maybe the people running Villainous Beauties Wiki requested for fandom to scrub the page. But in either case, what that all amounts to is an observational curio. I will not deny, I love an observational curio. I love to say, isn't that interesting? Isn't that poetic? Isn't that fun? But what I'm trying to get at here is that the story sort of ends here. We don't have a stronger understanding of the wiki or of the page. I'd love it if there was a thunderous narrative, the Battle of Bree Turner, something we could really sink our teeth into, but there just isn't anything more to add. The Bree Turner page existed, and now it doesn't. And yet, I still feel like I have more to say. So in the wake of my mixed feelings and in honor of the many, many laughs I've extracted from that page, I now present the Strangest Obituary. You know how TV networks would do like variety specials dedicated to so-and-so person's life and career? That's what this is, and the guest of honor is Bree Turner. I've prepared a handful of little treats that circle the central theme, and I will now present them to you. Let's jump in. So the first thing that I wanted to explore was the current state of Villainous Beauties Wiki in a post-Bree environment. The wiki is far from dead. It has like 1,000 more pages now than it did at the time of that video. It is thoroughly active. Those who have seen the original video may remember that at the time, Bree's page was the longest on the wiki by a pretty sizable margin. Heather Chandler remains in the second place slot today. The new number 1 is Lilith from Femme Fatales. I understand that she is the mysterious and enigmatic hostess who introduces each episode. Lilith, in a prison guard's uniform, explains that prison can be a very scary place and asks what a spoiled Hollywood actress can do when thrown in with the prison guards. She even states that Lacey Rivers is going to rely on her acting skills and is about to give the performance of her own life. She even went that far. She is despicable. Lilith, in a schoolgirl's uniform, states that the brain stops maturing by the time we're into our 20s, which is why we go away to college. Lilith states that this house would be for sale right now if it wasn't haunted. Girl, what house? This is not how you write a summary. I am not in the room with Lilith. I do not know what house she is referring to. While feeding a beautiful horse named Tango. Lilith states that it's Rachel Worth's wedding day and that the corpse in bed is not the man she was planning to marry. I am obsessed with this. Like, it's literally someone doing the Rod Serling thing, like saying a blurb at the start of the variety show, and we just get a paragraph thesaurusing whatever she says each time. I love it.
Prison can be a very scary place. What's a spoiled young Hollywood actress to do when thrown into the tank with all those sharks? Those are just the prison guards. Lacey Rivers is going to have to rely on her one skill she can count on: her acting. Our little Lacey is about to give the performance of her life.
Lilith informs us that we all wear masks and that they're not only for fun. Honestly, like, thank you, Lilith. Like, I would not have known that. Okay, I was trying to search if the mom from The Baby would be there, because she's everything. She's in the triangle too somewhere. I did not find her, but I did find baby Lisa Simpson. The little girl was eventually driven to attempt to sabotage her baby sister, only to be caught by their parents, who scolding her, causing her to run up to her bedroom in tears. That night, Lisa had a nightmare where she was an adult woman who was the wheelchair-bound Maggie's caregiver. The nightmare began with the evil woman brushing her hair in front of the mirror. When an adult Maggie entered the room to ask where her food was, the psychotic Lisa turned heel by taunting her younger sister and saying she would learn how to fly. Although the disabled woman pleaded her older sister to spare her life, the jealous woman threw her down a flight of stairs to her death, with the mad woman cackling maniacally after committing the murder. They're doing the fanfiction thing where you replace every instance of a character name or a pertinent pronoun with the adjective man/woman/whatever, but this makes it sound like there's like 5 women in this room. Just out of curiosity, I clicked on the like discussion forum thing, and the first thing that is thrown into my face: which Darman villainesses should be on this wiki? My Story Animated? Is this wiki's target audience like uncles? Who should I bring to Sweet Valley University? Why didn't Dom, David, and Kristen just adopt a child? I am always asking this. Every June, we celebrate all the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex beauties of the wiki. And queer ones every Pride Month in June. Honestly, like, I'll clap to that. There are very few protected pages on Villainous Beauties wiki. One of them is for Penny Blake from Hometown Killer. I truly do not care about the body of this page. It was protected because people kept editing it to like call her like dumb. The only thing on the talk page is someone saying, 1. Is Penny dumb? Yes or no? 2. Was dumb Penny seriously trying to injure innocent Charles? 3. Was dumb Penny seriously trying to kill innocent Charles? And nobody ever answered. I like to think that she was just doing it by accident. I have not seen this movie. I haven't even read the page. Let's look for the opposite of Bree. The shortest page on the wiki is Kelly Major from Bonds Will Be Broken. And there's nothing. There's nothing on the page. Like, it's empty. There's nothing there. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's the opposite of Bree because Bree is sexual while Kelly is nothing. Bree is young while Kelly is nothing. Bree is astronomical and Kelly's just not there. The page with the most categories is Mrs. Blue from Tomorrow's Teachings. The main villainess from Mom Poisons Pregnant Daughter. Ending is shocking. The evil and deranged Mrs. Blue. Everything on this website is written like this. I wish that there were like video game fans on this website just so that I could see them say like, the detestable Wendy. Mrs. Blue is from a 12-minute YouTube video. That thumbnail is fucking crazy. I feel like I'm going insane. Blonde, callous, mother, grandmother, psychotic, delusional, failed seduction, adulteress, jealous, vengeful, would hurt a child, attempted murder, conspirator, deceiver, poison, pistol, domestic abuser, elderly, rich, pervert, sabotage, shotgun, lipstick, chaotic, evil, vain, begged by hero for mercy, Munchausen by proxy, master manipulator, accidental demise, shock of impending doom, killed by own weapon, killed by female, killed by hero, killed by relative, bondage used by villainous, live action villainous, web media villainous, fate deceased, demise, shot. So the Villainous Beauties wiki is the same as it ever was. The next thing I'd like to move on to is the general reputation of the character of Bree. Because it seems to be pretty universally agreed upon that Bree is like a very attractive character, like an exceptionally attractive character. Juliana Gill was kind of a sex symbol at the time. Not too long ago, Bree won a Reddit poll for like the most attractive woman in Friday the 13th. There's this way that people talk about this character that kind of makes me feel like I'm the outsider here. It's as if everybody is like wired to perceive this character in a certain way, even 16 years after this movie came out. And they perceive this character and talk about this character in some way that is not just attraction. Like, attraction alone can't explain this. And once again, like, I feel like I'm the person that doesn't get it. To illustrate the general attitude, you don't need to look any farther than the comments on any YouTube video or Reddit post that includes her even peripherally. At 1:15, I would remove the underwear at Bree. Bree is so fine, but I would take Jenna instead. I wish I have Bree. Me when I have crackers and nothing to put on them. I hated her character after she took her best friend's man and had sex and kept going and being loud while she was at the door. No way. Trent is lucky as fuck to hold her delicious tots. I love Bree in this movie, played by Juliana Gill. She is so sexy as hell, baby, and she is so gorgeous too, and I loved her to death, man, and I had a huge crush on her too. Thank you for clarifying. I know she is so beautiful, but I think Chewie deserved her more because I thought he was better looking than Trent, and she clearly only wanted him since he was upper class. I am Skywalker 95. What the hell is happening? I feel like a boss fight is starting. When it comes to beautiful ladies in the Friday the 13th franchise, Bree is definitely one of them. Well, how could anyone argue with that? Trent was luckier than a four-leafed clover to smash that. I love her so much. Her character is the show stealer because her plan is to have sex with Trent when Jenna was helping Clay to find his sister. Bree does get Trent to go to the upstairs bedroom with her to get naked and have sex. I can't stop thinking about this one in particular. Like, I love this character because plot recap. Trent's sex scene is the best in the franchise, with one of the hottest girls in the franchise. And it's heavily implied he doesn't use a condom with her.
Trent got to touch Bree's breasts and made love to her after spending all day together.
Out of this entire group, the only two to make use of the bedroom are Trent and Bree. Damn, look at that figure of Bree. Which is why Trent puts a baby in her. Bree not having a boyfriend is beyond me. He probably intended to pull out, but decided to finish in her just to get back at Jenna. I like Bree, white pants girl. In earlier drafts of the script, she had white shorts on. Hotter. I would like to read those drafts. I've also come across some Reddit posts like debating whether or not Trent is like redeemable. People are too hard on him. No, it's not okay to be that idiotic and trash my family's house while you were a guest. No, it's not okay for you to come to my home as a stranger and buck up on me because your sister's been missing a few weeks. Get off my property. Trent isn't as bad as everyone thinks. As much as he's a douchebag, he brings his racially diverse group of friends to his dad's expensive lake house.
Why are you specifying that?
Is Trent having like 2 people of color in his friend group supposed to exonerate him from accusations of being an asshole? Be serious. What a crazy thing to say. It makes it sound like for a white person to hang out with a person of color is like charity. Said group of friends immediately begin to trash the place. Trent is then in a bad mood. The girl he's been hoping to spend the weekend with promptly runs off with a dude she just met and stays gone for 6+ hours. So he sleeps with hot blonde who's been throwing herself at him all night long. He's obviously a spoiled rich guy with some entitlement issues. At the very worst, he's just kind of rude. And he cheats on his girlfriend after he thinks she's cheating on him. Something interesting is revealed by the sentiment that cheating becomes slightly more acceptable if you suspect your partner of cheating first, even if the suspicion is unsubstantiated. That implies a situation where you should be able to mitigate your culpability for literally anything in a relationship as long as you can verbalize some form of dissatisfaction that you're getting revenge for. And to me, that doesn't seem like the most reasonable approach. Of course, the takes people voice online about spousal fidelity are completely baffling even at the best of times. There's nothing especially exceptional about this one. But the really funny thing is that this take can really only be argued because it's a Friday the 13th movie and almost every single one of these characters is like halfway into the slaughterhouse. Like if any of the pertinent characters survived and there was even the faintest suggestion that this action would have a consequence or that Jenna had any opinion on it whatsoever, this position would be even more impossible to construe as reasonable. So what we've learned is that cheating on your partner is fine if 1, you've decided somewhere in your mind palace that they started it, and 2, you are going to get murdered later the same day. I hope you're taking notes. There will be a quiz. There are also like forum threads discussing Bree's motivations. What was Bree going to do with her videotape? Was she filming for posterity? I'm sure Bree planned on blackmailing Trent with the tape. However, how embarrassing that the camera and tape were probably given to her relatives after the crime scene was cleaned up. Honestly, I kind of doubt it was ever given back to anyone unless they specifically requested it. More than likely, it sat in an evidence locker until it was eventually destroyed. Probably would have given a couple of cops a free thrill before, though. Where do I start with this? This is genuinely fascinating to read as someone with minimal interest in this film on like a fandom level. Like even setting aside that doing like theory crafting for this movie is sort of like doing a textual analysis of a Caesar salad. There's a haunting aura somewhere in the shape of this discussion. Like we're not even speaking about it as a movie or as a work of fiction at this point. We're speaking about it as like a bridge to another reality, a reality that continues existing after the credits roll. This past tense speculation on where this tape would end up afterward, how her parents would feel about it, how the cops would feel about it. This idea that the act of interpreting a movie would manifest as modeling an extrapolated vision of what will happen after the events of its plot, how the world will keep turning and the structures of society will react to its events, particularly when the movie itself gives absolutely no inkling of any of that. It is completely alien to me. Almost as alien as the general way people talk about her. There is absolutely something to be said for this just being the way that people online talk about women they find attractive. The most obvious comparison that some of these comments beg for is that old meme about the infamous comments Nicki Minaj would get. And like, if you look at the comment section of any woman's selfie, you will find someone saying some embarrassing shit like, oh wow, what a lady, awooga, and probably being at least passively misogynist, if not overtly so. But there are patterns in the Bree discourse that overlap and expand out of expressions of desire. Like, across all of these comments, there is a fixation. It's not just that people are saying she's attractive, it's that one, they're saying she's attractive and very little else, and two, the discussion is consistently being routed back toward her sexual presence and the specific minutiae of her sex scene. Like, the more I see, the more I'm convinced that it's not just the wiki page. A sizable portion of the general discourse around this movie is laser focused on that one sex scene, and this is still the case a decade and a half later. It's as if this character has become some kind of talisman, but no matter how I try to look at this, I can't complete the puzzle. It frustrates me to no end. We need to move on. The next thing that I would like to explore is Bree's presence on other wikis. For example, she has a page on the horror film wiki. It's a very brief page, and it kind of haunts me. She is an extremely busty young blonde who serves the role of the party girl slash seductress. She makes a wild sex tape with her best friend's boyfriend and purposefully gets impregnated by him during it. Bree is a wild chick character who enjoys everything. She tries to still Trent, Jenna's boyfriend, for herself. This page haunts me. It's so brief, but you can see all of these turns of phrase, all of these little collocations that also appeared in that Villainous Beauties article. It's like there's an essence that's trying to erupt out from underneath the article, and at the same time, it's like they declawed her, you know? I've been editing and a little light bulb went on above my head. When I was initially recording, I forgot to check the history of this page, and sure enough, pretty much as soon as I click the history button, enlightenment smacks into my face like a bug on a windshield. Yes, previous versions of this article have barreled through a kaleidoscopic miscellany of variations upon our favorite sleazy little incunable. It's substantially shorter than the Villainous Beauties version and stays more closely within the bounds of the film for whatever the hell that's worth, yet somehow it emphasizes the pregnancy thing even harder. Unbeknownst to Trent, but suspected by Bree, she is now pregnant with Trent's child and is absolutely ecstatic that not only did she get him to impregnate her, but that there's nothing Jenna can do about it now. Bree, despite her exhaustion, smiles. The comma placement suggests that this is despite her exhaustion smiles, like exhaustion smile is a kind of thing, knowing that what was meant for Jenna is now growing inside of her. Jesus fucking Christ. You know, we're in real omniscient narrator territory here. Unless I forgot the moment where the movie cut away to some like real-time zygote action. As they cuddle together, Bree giggles with her man and she decides to bury her head into his neck and nuzzle and kiss him. I love that wording, like she decides to do that. Did she ever get around to it? This should be on her like goals section. Outcome unknown. Also, unlike the Villainous Beauties version, this page actually had a section documenting Bree's death in the movie, and it immediately leads with, unfortunately, Bree's pregnancy would never come to terms. I love that, come to terms, like her pregnancy is making peace with itself. That part is not the elephant in the room though. Bree runs upstairs looking for her new boyfriend, who has just impregnated her. The antlers skewer Bree's body and burst out through her ample chest, killing her instantly, and by extension, her unborn child. I'm not even sure what to emphasize here. The fact that it's like, I guess, a fast-acting instant pregnancy, or the fact that the cadence of this article keeps tiptoeing closer and closer to like pro-life. Now, here's the crazy part. All of that content was removed from the page on the grounds of vandalism, which once again is pretty fair, but this deletion happened on November 29th, 2024, like literally 4 days before the Villainous Beauties page went down. I assume this is a coincidence, although it is hilarious to imagine a like Bree Turner task force systematically scrubbing her from the web in an act of huge, all-natural, milky white cyber terrorism. The thing about this that's really driving me insane is that the exact midpoint between these two dates is my birthday. 100% a coincidence, but like, what lovely gifts I've been given. Anyway, moving on. She has a page on the Friday the 13th wiki. It's even shorter than that one, although you'll never guess what can be found in the history. You can't fucking escape this story. It's pursuing us like it's Jason and we're Bree. The story was removed and the page was protected in 2019, which as I recall was the year the Villainous Beauties page went up. One might feel tempted to put two and two two together. I am less interested in the body of this page's last version than the fact that this might be the origin story of this fucking page. On May 8th, 2010, yes, a year and a couple months after the movie came out, an IP address user made 2 edits to the page, starting the snowball that became what we love today. I would like the record to show that I literally only intended this section to be us frolicking in the flowers a little bit, glancing at random wiki pages, but I am now forced to present what appears to be the earliest version of the Bree Turner page. Bree convinces Trent to go to the bedroom with her. After that, they walk into the bedroom and Bree takes Trent's shirt off and her bra, showing her fabulous boobs. They are then shown later having sex, moaning heavily with Bree on top of Trent, fully nude as well as Trent. Bree's boobs, bare back, bum, and chest is seen. However, her is not seen, obviously because it would get X-rated, and same with Trent. Within hours, a user with the handle Lord Krayak undid all of that. Going that in depth on the sex scene isn't really necessary. Imagine that. Imagine a world where this is too much detail on this scene. In truth, it's a bit inaccurate to call that the first version of the page we know because there's no direct through line. The history is broken up. It's more accurate to call it an omen, a frightening sign portending what was to come, like a monolith suddenly manifesting in a field somewhere. It was 6 years later, in May 2016, that a separate IP address user stuck a bicycle pump into this wiki page and inflated it into a much more familiar shape. 2 months later, another user undid all of those revisions. In September of that year, multiple other users made several edits, slowly restoring that aura. In January 2017, somebody deleted most of it with the edit summary fixed spelling. It was restored within days, and that's really what it looked like for the following couple of years. There was a period from mid-2017 to mid-2018 where the article actually looked normal, or, you know, normal by wiki standards, but a string of edits by a host of users gradually built the page up into the behemoth we recognize, and the volume of counter edits never really kept up. It got to the point where somebody undoing the deletion of the fucking erotica called it reverting vandalism. This is deranged, like actually deranged. This page spent years growing like a mushroom on the bark of this wiki. The volume of people trying to keep this page in line with the rest of the wiki pales in comparison to the volume of people and the volume of effort committed to iterating upon a subpar horny post. Imagine if I walked into a McDonald's and declared, "This dining room is now a country and I am the prime minister," and then I just redecorated the place to my whims and had random customers executed or whatever. I went to active pains to prevent the McDonald's from functioning as a restaurant. And then imagine that this went on for literal years, and the closest anyone came to actually objecting to this was that like once every 2 or 3 months somebody would push me out of the McDonald's and then I would just turn around and walk back in and nobody would stop me. How does this happen? And for the record, at the same time, the same thing was also happening on Trent's page. And this went on until eventually in 2019, as mentioned, the edits were locked at long last, and some of the contributors had their accounts blocked. Bree's sex scene, played by Juliana Gill, had to be some of the roughest sex ever recorded in a movie. Do you agree? She also appears on a wiki called Evil Babes Unfiltered. It seems to be like a mirror re-upload of the Villainous Beauties page, but it also has several distinctions. It assigns her a different cup size. Many have compared Bree's proportions to that of a real-life big-titty anime girl with impossibly huge boobs and other insane body proportions. I'm noticing quotation marks but no citation. Should maybe work on that. So apparently Evil Babes Unfiltered was created to be like an uncensored mirror wiki to the Evil Babes wiki, which has since been renamed the Female Villains wiki. So like there's another one. There was another Phantom.com wiki that is equivalent to the Villainous Beauties wiki, and this one is apparently even busier than the Villainous Beauties wiki. It has over 8,000 pages. It doesn't have any Darman characters, but it does have both anime and video game characters. It does not have Bree, for the record. I do wonder if Oh my god. I just glimpsed the banner and fucking Cousin Mel is there. Okay, Cousin Mel is not in the triangle, but like she's in the same room as the triangle. Cousin Mel, you are a bad woman. Santa for Christmas send her a tiger to kill her and a lot of coal. Anyway, what I was trying to say, I wonder about the history of this wiki in relation to Villainous Beauties. Apparently the female villains wiki, formerly Evil Babes, was created 5 years earlier than Villainous Beauties was. I wish that I knew if there was some kind of like relationship there, you know? Like, was Villainous Beauties inspired by Female Villains Wiki, either in like an indirect sense, or like did it come out of some kind of dispute? I would not even know where to begin looking for that kind of information though. The Villains Wiki does not have a page for Bree, but it does have Trent. I am obsessed with the page quote. What could Trent possibly be saying? Is he saying your tats are stupendous? Or perhaps your tuts are stupendous, referring obviously to Bree's extensive collection of 3D printed Tutankhamons, which she has with her in every scene. Trent is an incredibly arrogant, rude, selfish, and self-centered individual. Selfish and self-centered. Throughout the film, Trent's only concern than the safety of others is partying and showing off his wealth status. He consistently ignores the warnings of Clay Miller and Jenna, to which he brushes off as jokes. Perhaps his most infamous act is cheating on Jenna with Bree. He suspects Jenna is cheating with Clay when she's just trying to help him find his sister. I love this. This is written like it's trying to persuade a reader that Trent is a bad person. And I also love the idea that somebody being a bad person makes them qualify like in a narrative as a villain. Furthermore, while having sex with Bree, he treats her like a sex object by having unprotected sex with her and values her breasts rather than anything else. By his death, he's proven to be nothing more than an empty coward as he abandons his friends for his own safety. God, get his ass. My favorite thing about this article is that it then just does like a 180. Frustrated by Jenna being gone, Trent finally gives in to her seduction. Trent proceeds to take a few condoms from Cherie's Ruff, not realizing he's not going to use them. Like, there is always something to be said for the ways that wiki articles on literally any wiki, Wikipedia included, despite all efforts to the contrary, will end up sounding like they have multiple voices in them, because they do. But this is like a particularly extreme example. Like, is he being sexist and objectifying Bree, or is he an innocent ditz unwittingly falling for her seduction? And then the way that it continues, the two friends make out very passionately before they take off their clothes. The two engage in wild, unprotected sex as Bree films him. As the pair continue to have sex, they both indicate to one another that they feel their orgasms approaching. You would be hard-pressed to call this like an erotic fanfic in the way that the other article was. You know, we've seen how intense it can get, but this is also a degree of information that is just not called for. From Wikipedia's extremely long list of Friday the 13th characters, she seduces and takes Trent to the bedroom, even though he is dating her friend Jenna. They both make out while Bree undresses herself and Trent before they have unprotected sex. The cheating couple does not let themselves be interrupted when Jenna tries to alert them about Jason's rampage. Their sexual affair ends with Bree and Trent reaching orgasm together. There it is again. How could that possibly be relevant to this page? The repetition of the adultery aspect, the comparatively restrained yet still unnecessary degree of detail about their sexual encounter. I'm starting to wonder if there's just some kind of like psychic effect cascading over the world that makes it impossible to write a sentence about this character without lapsing into like a cosmic horror kind of insanity. Actually, you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, I think Bree could be a great vehicle for cosmic horror. With all of these phrases about like how her body proportions are unfathomable, inconceivable, incomparable, even astronomical, I feel like there would be like a fun creative space to play in terms of like lapsing between like lust and insanity. It's editing Indigo again. I cannot resist returning to this idea for a moment, because honestly, I think Cosmic Bree Turner could be the key to a really rich and unique thematic space. If you're gonna say this character is is a sex object, a disembodied avatar of sex more than a person. Men see her as a prize and women see her as a predator. Then the natural next question is like, what does she have to be in order to fulfill that? And you have some obvious themes in play. You have the politics of desire and attraction, the sexual subjugation of women and the realms of sexual violence. You have sex as a kind of grotesquerie, a body that ticks all of the boxes conventionally associated with lust, but which is literally not fathomable, not comprehensible. A fear of sex aspect, which volunteers itself for a juxtaposition against Jason's infamous psychosexuality. But then it's like, you know how renditions of the 7 deadly sins are always like 6 guys who embody the respective sins, and then a sexy boob lady who is more the archetypal object of lust than the subject? Cosmic Bree provides a space to inspect and react to that tendency, to that space between the observer and the observed, the subject and the object. An eternal object of lust, a black hole of desire who forcefully draws lust out of an observer. The archetypal object of desire as something that does not emerge from reality. And if this character were to really embody the principle I joked about before, the idea that an observer can only speak about her in sexual terms, this would inevitably draw you to an incredibly fertile ground, sorry for the word choice, to satirize gender roles and the hegemonic expectations of performing normative sexuality. And it would situate this narrative in opposition to the cosmic horror conventions of the fear of the other by instead foregrounding a fear of normalcy, where any and all of the fulfillment that is offered by alterity is suffocated by an externally imposed incentive toward reproduction and heteropatriarchy. Anyway, thank you for listening. Back to the video. And then I've saved my last wiki example for last. TV tropes. TV tropes drives me insane. I liked it when I was a kid, but at this point, and for several years now, every time I look at the website, I get this rush of dizziness, like I've just been like spinning for an hour. Makes me feel like my fingernails are all falling off. All girls want bad boys. She's clearly attracted to jerk-ass Trent. Jerk-ass Trent. I know that it's there as like a descriptor, but I think it's the capital letter that makes it sound like jerk-ass is an honorific, and eventually manages to get him to have very wild sex with her. Buxom beauty standard. Trent has ample reason to never shut up about her breasts. Calling your orgasms. Bree lets Trent know that she is close before the immodest orgasm ensues. This is like one of those things about TV tropes that makes me feel like I'm going insane. Because like when I go to a fan wiki like plot recap, I'm getting a plot recap. Maybe it's overly detailed and maybe it's like deranged horny fanfic, but it's a plot recap nonetheless. When you go to TV tropes, you get like hundreds of micro recaps in like a virtually randomized order. Deadpan snarker. As Trent keeps going on about how stupendous her breasts are, she wryly replies, "Wow, you sure know how to make a girl feel special." And that quote is a link, and it links to sarcasm mode. Nothing else on the related pages is really all that interesting, except on the Your Mileage May Vary page for the movie, there's a bullet point that says, "Bree sleeping with Trent while he is still technically dating her friend isn't exactly final girl behavior, but it isn't particularly bad for this franchise." However, a lot of fan fiction takes it for granted that she is a gold digger out to blackmail Trent with her sex tape, and or due to a shot of an unopened box of condoms in the extended cut, deliberately get pregnant to make Trent marry or financially support her, and that she is planning to do so throughout all of her screen time. Now, this statement is entirely in line with several of the comments that we've encountered both in this video and in the original video. However, what catches me off guard is a lot of fan fiction. Like, I wanted to corroborate this, so I went to try and look up examples. On AO3, there is like one single fanfic that is tagged as Bree, and it's literally just Bree like fucking Jason or whatever. There's like a couple of like disparate unfinished things on fanfiction.net, but that's like it. I have no clue what this is referring to. Where is all of this fan fiction that puts forth this interpretation? There are only 3 ways that I can take this. One, there's like a fan fiction that's been posted in some like forum or some obscure website that won't come up on search engines, in which case like we're just never finding it. 2, the person that wrote this comment is just like making it up or conflating comments with fan fiction. Or 3, this is in reference to the Villainous Beauties page. That's about all the terrain we can really cover on the wiki front. So the 4th item I want to present is the things I wish I had said in the original video. Because like, plainly, I'm smarter now than I was then. I'm more practiced, more experienced, more worldly. That's not to say I'm ashamed of my state from 3 years ago or anything, more so that I expect that in 3 years I will be smarter than I am now. I mean, one can hope, right? So I have a short list of 6 points that I wish I had voiced in that video regarding the Villainous Beauties page. I'll start with a simple one. The invention of the surname, not just Bree, but Bree Turner. Interesting, isn't it? Turner, one who turns, as if to say she has turned on her loved ones, turned villainous even. I'm joking, that's not the point I'm getting at. Turner was listed as her name on the page, but omitted from the title. It's kind of funny. It comes off almost as like a subtle acknowledgement of the fact that it's not actually the character's name in the movie. According to the Friday the 13th wiki, Trent's surname Sutton is revealed in the extended cut, but there is no similar note for Bree. My best guess is that it was born out of conflation with the actor Bree Turner. She was in Grimm in the 2010s. I never watched it, but I have it on good authority that it is a real television show with both episodes and seasons. I am mildly curious about where Turner came from. As mentioned, we can't access the Villainous Beauties page's history anymore, but I did note in the initial video that the page had gone up in 2019, and I'm choosing to trust my past self's statement. The earliest source I can find is a list of deaths in Friday the 13th from the Creative Thoughts wiki. When Bree was added to the page on the 21st of April 2012, it was without a surname, exactly as she's listed in the movie's credits. The page's edit history is lengthy, but by manually performing a slightly messy binary search, I found the exact edit in like 2 guesses. In an edit on October 13th, 2013, which for the record was not a Friday, the user added the name Turner to Bree alongside last names for several other characters who are not given them in the film. Most of those names have been removed from the page now, but Bree Turner remains. Creative Thoughts wiki has 1,400 pages and 10 users, 9 of which are responsible for fewer than a dozen edits each, and 4 of which appear to be the same person. The last user, the wiki's founder, has made over 25,000 edits and appears to be in effect the proprietor of this wiki. The blurb says, "This is about my thoughts I think about someone/something. I'm also very imaginative about what I think. I also have information about what I know and people don't." And the articles are an array of death lists and random character bios and also OC information. This seems to be a single person's like general repository, which is cool. I hope that person has a good time. They might be responsible for inventing Bree's last name, as far as I can tell. I have no clue how it would have spread, but that's where we're at. Of course, what this little finding doesn't account for is the possibility that another wiki had featured the name first before it was later removed in an edit. This would not come up in search engines, and it would be extremely difficult to look for, so we really can't say whether Creative Thoughts wiki is indeed responsible for this name. All I can reasonably say is that it's the earliest extant example. Okay, a point that is a little more juicy, as Trent would say. The Dearly Departed article had a pretty overt fascination with Bree's anatomy. I remarked as much in the first video, like the article recounts her proportions as being exceptional. Her ass is inhumanly fat and her tits are literally bigger than her head, so on and so forth. And she's assigned a pretty rare cup size as well, 32 GG, in case you forgot. But when you look at photos of this character, well, that's just not what's on the screen right now. Like, nothing about her proportions seems particularly exceptional beyond the eternally discordant skinniness of Hollywood. But she's spoken of like a full-on hyperinflation queen. She's being described as like that one anime boob lady with the gif. I think there's something a little interesting about that, like the circumstance of looking at a woman and feeling attracted to her and feeling attracted to her breasts specifically, and therefore reporting them as being like anatomically implausible 99th percentile type shit. Like, it takes a sentiment which I understand to be fairly common, which goes large breasts are attractive, and inverts it into attractive breasts are large. Maybe it's a lack of a frame of reference. Maybe it's the social conventions of attractiveness and expressions of attraction overriding the capacity to make an accurate descriptive comment. Maybe it's literally just a deliberate invention of a new version of this character to project onto one's imagination. Peripheral to that observation, I take similar interest in the page's fascination with the naturalness of her body. This of course reproduces a pretty common flexion in cultural conversations about appearance, and particularly medicalized appearance, whereby a beauty or perceived beauty that is or can be construed as unnatural or otherwise owed to external intervention is positioned as an inferior class of beauty. It's beyond blatant in the phrasing here. Bree's body is attractive and exceptional, but it is all the more attractive and all the more exceptional for being unfettered by cosmetic intervention. The way that the sentence is constructed positions the naturalness as gravy, a cherry on top. And furthermore, this naturalness is indirectly connotated with a vision of a superior sexuality, the all-natural body of a porn star. The unspoken corollary, a porn star's body is not expected to be natural, quote-unquote. Pornography here is the locus of non-nature, and Bree is superior to that. She is a bastion of undiluted God-given sexuality, practically a fertility goddess. As with many aspects of this article, there's a strong undercurrent of misogyny here, of looking for ways to mark a woman as tainted. An unattractive woman is framed as constitutionally devoid of value, but a woman who is attractive through means that are considered deceptive or inauthentic is similarly devalued. It starts to sound like physiological essentialism. The attractive woman may as well be a different species. The cultural view of the superiority of a natural body is concomitant to anxieties surrounding GMOs and inorganic foods and so-called chemicals, the overall neo-vitalist positioning of the organic as possessed of some immaterial yet undeniable quiddity that ontologically distinguishes it from the inorganic. Compare also discourses surrounding Botox and other neuromodulators, steroid use, and really any kind of voluntary cosmetic procedure other than like mole removal. It all ties back to culturally contingent ideas about health and strength as emanating from the body and cultivated through discipline. That is, health and strength as heralds of individual virtue and their absence as a signal of individual failure. The human body as something that you as an individual have some kind of broad responsibility toward, further to an individuated project of self-actuation. Granted, that is more pertinent to fitness than body modification, but I feel that it's not an irrelevant discursive space here, because in my experience, anxieties around body modification seem to surface at or near the crossroads of 1, the positioning of bodily autonomy as empowering manipulations of form that are presented as some kind of physiological degradation of humans as a species, and 2, anxieties of cosmetic technologies as inflecting a sort of boundary-breaking meaninglessness upon social categories that are positioned as both natural and deserved. The crossroad means that body modification plays a discursive double role. It represents enhancement and corruption in equal measure, and that's no coincidence. The allegedly artificial acquisition of certain traits must then be positioned as either intrinsically or observably inferior to the allegedly natural occurrence of the same traits. I'm getting a bit off track here, but this appeal to the superiority of the so-called natural body and the inferiority of a modified one is foundationally conservative. It's a quarter step from condemning biomedical gender transition. Hell, if you take it to its logical conclusion, it should be condemning virtually all medical treatment. Does the pacemaker taint your heart? And why stop there? Why not become a full-blown anti-civ? It's such a small thing, but it really is interesting to me how even the most banal of sexual screeds can reproduce and end up situating themselves within very specific cultural discourses. It really speaks to the pervasiveness of those discourses. Next point. I can no longer access the comments on Bree's page, but I have a distinct memory of multiple commenters remarking that they found it extremely evident that Juliana Gill was like super into it, that you could tell that she was like getting off on it. I intentionally omitted it from the original video because at the time it kind of just seemed like a crass thing to linger on. I was going to give a little speech about how those comments no longer exist, but I promise I'm not crazy. But as it turns out, there are extremely similar comments over on her page on the horror film wiki. I'm not gonna go through them one by one. When I say there's a lot of them, I truly mean it, and some of them get graphic as all hell. The gist is that commenters seem convinced that this scene in the movie depicts Juliana Gill's actual unfiltered, unperformed titillation, or even that it is outright unsimulated sex, as well as extensive speculation on whether the actors had recurring trysts off camera, which eventually devolves into two people hammering out a sizable and protracted back and forth third-person role play on a sort of yes and principle over the course of literal weeks, and the username of one of them is a Malcolm in the Middle reference. There's something about this extent that obviously rings a bit creepy, although when it comes to sexual fantasies about public figures, there's not really anything that hasn't already been said. Something I will note about the sentiment that the actors were genuinely actually titillated on screen is that, well, that's a completely fucking deranged take. Like, if you think the actor was like actually into it, then you're kind of saying you think she's a bad actor. It generally slots into the fairly popular and equally annoying assertion that random scenes or pieces of dialogue in movies and TV are or seem unscripted, which is a cousin of the stock phrases to the effect of, "Oh my god, were you on drugs when you wrote that? Your tweet was so zany, you should probably check your carbon monoxide detector." It really gets on my nerves because even speaking as somebody who loves and respects improvisation, sometimes things are intense intentional, you know? Look at that, I'm already on another tangent. Getting back on track, I think the projection of that kind of desire and pleasure onto the actor is probably most accurately summed up as, I am into this, therefore everyone else is too. I do, however, think it also might reflect a broader desire to search for some kind of truth that undergirds a fictional performance. While looking through comments, I've encountered a couple of people referring to the actor who plays Trent as lucky for pulling Juliana Gill among other women he's been paired with in other roles, and to me it's just a completely alien way to speak about actors, like as if he had actually successfully courted her in real life rather than them being two actors portraying two characters that hook up in a movie which they acted in for money because that's their job. Moving on, I kind of alluded to this in the original video, but the webpage strikes me as a hunt for a sexual outlet, a catharsis. The conglomeration of engagement on that page calls to my mind things like those anecdotes of people using random comment sections for roleplay. It's pretty apparent that this character seems to have represented a portal into the mysterious realm of sexuality. It may well be that for some chunk of people who either couldn't or didn't want to access conventional sexual outlets, movies with sex scenes may have occupied that space, or at least part of it. I'm reminded of the cultural trope of kids gathering in secret to watch gory movies and leaf through racy magazines. What I'm about to say is speculation, so take it with an astronomically fat grain of salt, but when I try to think about things that could explain why this page ended up here of all places, I suppose there are particular eruptions of banality that could have made it happen, like somebody radically misinterpreting the purpose of the wiki, or somebody simply not being aware of any of the alternative platforms like DeviantArt or AO3 or Pastebin or Excel. But there are two problems with those notions. One, now that we know that the same thing has recurred on several platforms, it's plainly far too organized and far too intentional to be an accident. And two, those theories are all putting it in positive terms, and I think that if we put it in negative terms, we will be rapidly jump scared by an answer. It's a website anybody can edit. It's a website that looks pretty innocuous on its face, and evidently if you pick the right website, then you can do this for years and years without being stopped. But there's another more specific and admittedly more presumptuous suspicion that is lodged in my mind like a machete in a rib cage, which is that for some person or persons there was some reason not to access any of the conventional watering holes for this particular kind of water. That maybe porn sites and fanfic sites and erotic fiction sites and fetish sites were all either something that this person or these people felt like they couldn't or shouldn't access. Maybe shame, maybe superiority, or maybe those sites were just straight up blocked on the Wi-Fi. It is, as mentioned, purely hypothetical. I think it just keeps recurring in my mind because the idea of using a page on a wiki as an outlet for sexual expression seems to go perfectly hand in hand with the idea of using a secondary character in a mediocre movie as an outlet for sexual expression. Like, both of these factors specifically parse to me as filling in a blank. The last item I have for this section is that in the original video, I made a factual error. I made an absurdly massive factual error that is literally bigger than my head. Not a single person has remarked on it in 3 years. I didn't even realize it until 2025. In the video, I said that Jenna and Jared Padalecki's character were the two survivors at the end of the movie. That was incorrect. That was not Jenna. That was Jarpad's sister. I literally watched the movie and thought that the sister was the one who got killed off and Jenna was the one who survived, but I had it backwards. I completely failed to tell these two characters apart, and I operated under this misconception for 3 years. It was literally while I was recording for this video, I think I was on TV Tropes and there was a mention of Jenna dying, and I was like, girl, what? She didn't die? But no, she did. I was wrong about that. Everything I said that describes Jenna's character in that sequence mostly carries over to the other character, but yeah, I'm not super good with faces. So at long last, our variety hour reaches its twilight. This is the end of our farewell to Bree Turner. I'm hardly prone to eulogizing, but I can't deny that the erasure of that page feels in some sense like the end of an era. As I've mentioned, it's brought me a lot of joy and a lot of laughter over the years, and on some level, I am sad to see it go, yet at the same time, that departure inspired me to find all of these new sources of laughter. When I'm at my lowest points, I start to fear that I've forgotten how to laugh and how to have fun, and it's sincerely meaningful to me to be able to prove myself wrong in a palpable way. I suppose in a manner of speaking, I've also become fascinated with this scene because I'm mesmerized by the response to it. We're not so different, you and I. But on some level, I feel that I still just can't comprehend the power, the significance, the animism that is vested in a single scene by so many people. Like, I'll admit that it is more intense than par for like a mainstream blockbuster sex scene. Part of that is because the scene depicts Bree taking charge of Trent. It does so as part of a running gag about Trent being emasculated, but I'm not gonna feign ignorance of why it would tick a box for some people. It toes into the broad territory of femdom without being so overtly fetishy as to be alienating. But none of that can account for the formation of what is in essence a community dedicated to this scene. A community that is still active even while there are high schoolers younger than the movie. None of that puts the question to rest, and I had given up on ever getting an explanation from the horse's mouth until I encountered a comment responding to someone sardonically remarking on the frequency of discussion of that scene. When you're dealing with utter perfection, you start to notice the little things. The scene is still exemplar, but hotness like this demands a what could have been style of thinking. This comment sticks out to me because, like, this person isn't saying anything that we don't know. We know that this fandom thinks that scene is perfection, and we know that they extrapolate extensively off of it, but the structuring of the information in these statements places in frank terms an epistemology that has danced in erstwhile darkness. The perspective of at least this one person is that this scene is exceptional and everything else emanates from that like some kind of demiurge. The scene itself is regarded for one reason or another as the pinnacle of eroticism, and its minute dissection follows from that, as if in a bid not only to expand and refine that eroticism, but to comprehend it. And I still can't pretend to relate, but I'm starting to think that this is another expression of the mechanism that is responsible for shipping and headcanons and several other expressions of fandom. It's a matter of loving something and wanting to inflate the things that glitter in it. In some sense, Bree Turner's story is the story of fandom, but I'm not gonna pretend this video is about making significant observations. Thank you for watching this bizarre video. Feel free to check out my Tumblr at Indigo's Findings, and thanks again to Waystlide Cool for bringing this to my attention. Everybody go follow her too. I expected this to be like 20 minutes long, and it's ended up as another clock devastator. I got a lot more self-referential and self-derivative than is the norm for me, and I suspect that as a result this video may be alienating or confusing to my newer viewers. I very rarely make sequel videos, and I was kind of excited at the opportunity to do this one. A handful of viewers have been watching my channel since that original video went up, which is crazy to me. As bizarre and unserious as this subject matter is, I've been blindsided by a degree of attachment that has put me in a kind of introspective mood. So I would like to say thank you to everyone who has stuck with my strange little channel through its interruptions and hiatuses and bouts of confusion. Thanks again, and remember to always stay stupendous. I have two utterly unimportant trivia tidbits that I could not find a way to integrate anywhere else in this video, so I'm just gonna state them presently. First, I stumbled on an interview with Juliana Gill where she says of Bree, she has a vindictive streak. She knows what she wants and nothing will get in her way. The eagle-eyed will recollect that these exact sentences were on the Bree page on the Villainous Beauties wiki. Like, two sentences from an interview were just copy-pasted into that page, and second, the guy who played Trent, Travis Van Winkle, yeah, that's his name, Travis Van Winkle is his name. He was in the Michael Bay Transformers as a character who was also named Trent. There's not much similarity between them, as is, I imagine, obvious from just looking at them side by side, but the superficial similarity of both being jerkasses, as TV tropes would say, has spawned like a handful of articles and posts purporting that these are the same character and that these films occupy a shared universe. They have varying degrees of facetiousness, and it's the kind of thing where sometimes I'm just at a bit of a loss because some reports seem to have some genuine conviction behind them. We're in a real Matt Pat situation now.